Hey guys, today's story is a little different. It's not about cheating lovers or bosses gone rogue. It's about blood. About what happens when the people closest to you believe in your failure more than they believe in your future. And it all started with a plate of lasagna and a smirk. My name is Caleb Morgan. I'm 37 years old. I own a plumbing and infrastructure company based in Des Moines, Iowa. I didn't grow up thinking I'd be turning wrenches or studying wastewater systems. Honestly, if you asked anyone in my family, including Methy, would have said I'd end up mowing lawns or stuck in someone's garage forever. Especially my older brother, Nathan. Nathan was the golden boy. The one with the shiny GPA, the top-tier internships, the alumni dinners with men who wore suits like armor. I was the kid who fixed the garbage disposal when it jammed. The one with dirt under his nails at Sunday brunch. And for a while, I accepted that. Until that one dinner. And if you think karma's slow, wait until you hear this. So, before you get pulled in, take a second to like this video and subscribe, but only if you actually believe that betrayal always comes back around. And hey, while you're at it, drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from and whether you've ever had someone look you in the face and call you less than. Now sit back, let the room go quiet, and let me tell you how it really went down. It was a family dinner at my parents' house mid-June. You know the type: coleslaw in pastel bowls, someone burning garlic bread, my mother yelling about ice cubes in the lemonade like it was a national crisis. The usual. Nathan arrived late, as always, in a car that cost more than my house. He made sure to park it just slightly angled, so the driveway couldn't help but showcase his brand new Tesla. He walked in with those crisp movements of someone who hasn't lifted anything heavier than a MacBook in years. His girlfriend, this wide-eyed marketing executive from Chicago, trailed behind him like a carefully staged accessory. I was in the kitchen helping Dad fix the sink, which had been leaking for months. I offered to take a look, and 30 minutes later, it was fixed. I washed my hands, dried them on a rag, and sat down at the table with everyone else. That's when it happened. Between the second round of wine and the dessert, someone asked what I'd been up to. I started talking just briefly about expanding the business. How we were bidding on a contract for a mid-sized commercial water system just outside the city. I wasn't bragging. Just sharing. And then Nathan laughed. Not the polite chuckle. Not the, "I'm happy for you" kind. No. It was the kind of laugh people make when they're hiding mockery behind white teeth. He took a sip of wine, looked around the table, and said, "I mean, come on. Caleb's a plumber. It's not like he's building rockets. Let's not pretend laying pipe is revolutionary." The room went quiet. Even Mom winced. But no one said anything. Not even me. Because I was used to it. Used to being the afterthought. The manual laborer in a family of suits and title chasers. But what Nathan didn't know, what no one at that table knew, was that I had spent the past 2 years quietly building something far bigger than anyone imagined. I just looked at him. Not angry. Not embarrassed. Just still. That moment didn't break me. It defined me. Because sometimes, the loudest thing you can do in a room full of noise is say absolutely nothing and then go out and let your results do the talking. That dinner? It wasn't the first time Nathan had taken a shot at me. But it would be the last time he got to do it without understanding exactly who he was talking to. Because 3 months later, I'd do something that would make him choke on that laugh. And it all started with a different kind of table. A metal workbench in a garage, a whiteboard full of pipe specs, and a blueprint that would change everything. Back then, I didn't own a headquarters. I had a storage locker, a dented van, and 2 employees who were basically cousins I paid under the table. But I had something Nathan never did. Grit. The kind that doesn't care about resumes. The kind that doesn't crumble under pressure, it crystallizes. And while he was sipping cocktails at launch parties and live tweeting from tech summits, I was out in the mud at 5 a.m. tightening bolts on main lines and shaking hands with foremen who ran half the city's infrastructure. People who actually kept things running. People who mattered when it came to water pressure and flow. Nathan had prestige. I had systems. And soon, systems would matter more than stock photos and venture capital. But back then, To him, I was just a plumber. Just the guy who fixed things when they broke. And maybe that's exactly what I was. Because my entire life had been cracked and leaking, and I was finally learning how to repair it from the inside out. People always think sibling rivalry is loud screaming matches, door slams, fistfights in the hallway. Ours wasn't. Ours was quiet. Clinical. Surgical. Nathan and I grew up in the same house, but it may as well have been two different homes. He was 3 years older. Taller. Sharper. Always the first to speak, and the last to be questioned. My parents didn't favor him in the way that's obvious, but in the way that's subtle enough to cut deeper. The way that hides behind pride. He got the new textbooks while I got the hand-me-downs. He got the college fund. I got the real-world talk. When he won a science fair in 8th grade, they took him to Chicago for the weekend. When I placed second in a city-wide auto repair competition, Dad said, "Well, I guess you're good with your hands," and walked back inside. It didn't feel like jealousy back then. It felt like gravity. Like the world was already tilted in his direction, and I was just trying not to slide off the map. Nathan went to Yale on a scholarship. Full ride. My mother told everyone at church for 3 months straight. My father shook his hand and said, "You're gonna carry the family name into new rooms." I went to community college. 2 semesters in, I dropped out. Not because I wasn't smart, but because I couldn't sit through another lecture about business ethics from a guy who never turned a wrench in his life. I enrolled in trade school instead. Learned plumbing, HVAC, systems maintenance. While Nathan was interning for tech companies and shadowing VPs, I was learning how to weld copper without scorching the insulation. He wrote code. I built actual systems that didn't crash when someone sneezed. But still was the success story. And I was the family anecdote. When my uncle introduced us at a wedding, he said, "This is Nathan. Works in tech. And this is Caleb, he's in pipes or something." I remember laughing at that one. Not because it was funny, but because I had no other choice. It wasn't that I hated Nathan. It was that Nathan never really saw me. Not the me I was becoming. Not the me who stayed up until 2 a.m. drafting a business plan on a hand-me-down laptop. Not the me who turned a single rusted van into a citywide service. He saw the version of me frozen in his head, the kid with grease on his jeans, fixing the bathroom sink while he practiced speeches in the mirror. I remember one Christmas, I must have been 27, Nathan brought his then-fiancée to dinner. She was polished. "Charming," called me, "the sweet one," after I offered her the last roll. Later, I overheard them in the hallway. She asked what I did. He said, "Caleb's a plumber. Salt of the earth. Does all right, but let's be honest, peaked in high school shop class." I didn't confront him. I never did. Because confrontation wasn't my weapon. Consistency was. While Nathan hopped from startup to startup, earning through titles, pivoting ideas, blaming the market for every failure, I was slowly stacking contracts. One client at a time. One word-of-mouth referral at a time. I built something that didn't crash when funding dried up. Something that couldn't be tanked by a single tweet or stock slide. Still, I stayed out of the spotlight. Let him shine. Let him be the first one our parents bragged about. Let him be the first to give a toast, the first to propose, the first to talk over me at dinner tables. Because I was waiting. Not for him to fail, but for me to be undeniable. That turning point came the day our father got sick. Stage 2 colon cancer. Sudden. Sharp. Ugly. I was the one who drove him to chemo. I was the one who paid for the extra treatments his insurance didn't cover. I was the one who changed the light bulbs in the garage, fixed the boiler, cleaned up after him when he couldn't hold things in anymore. Nathan came to visit twice. Brought gift baskets both times. Left after an hour. The day Dad came home from the hospital for good, he asked me to tighten the railing by the stairs. I did. Then he looked at me while I looked and said, "You were always steady, Caleb." I should have seen it sooner. I didn't know what to say to that. But something shifted that day. Because Dad started telling people about my business. Started bragging about city contracts and safety ratings. Started asking for advice. And Nathan? He didn't like that. At the next family dinner, he brought up some app he was developing, something about streamlining inventory systems for boutique warehouses. Everyone nodded politely. Then Mom asked me how my business was going, and I told her we just landed a school district renovation deal. Nathan laughed. No offense, but I think what Caleb does is important. Like functionally. But I mean, how scalable is it really? Scalable. A word he liked to throw around when he felt cornered. I looked at him and said, apparently scalable enough to fix Dad's medical bills. How's the app going? He didn't answer. Just drank his wine. And I realized, for the first time, that he wasn't better than me. He was just louder. And the only reason his words had ever hurt was because I gave them power. That was the night I stopped listening to his voice and started trusting my own. The road ahead wasn't easy. But it was mine. And I was about to pave it with every quiet step I'd taken in the dark. When you grow up being underestimated, you develop a kind of patience other people don't understand. I wasn't interested in proving anyone wrong. I was focused on proving myself right. That's how Morgan Systems was built. Not in one dramatic overnight launch, not with a big VC splash or a ribbon-cutting ceremony, but in silence. In spreadsheets nobody saw. In 6 a.m. site visits. In invoices typed by tired hands. In the trust of customers who didn't care about prestige, only that the water ran clear and the pipes never burst. I started with one van. An old Ford Transit, hand-painted lettering on the sides, tools and crates rattling every time I turned a corner. The first few clients were friends of friends. Small jobs, residential inspections, minor replacements, seasonal drain clearings. Most people expected me to cap out at that level. But I had other plans. I took night classes not in plumbing, but in business strategy, systems design, and infrastructure tech. I stayed up learning how cities were planned, how water systems scaled across districts. While Nathan was pitching investors and burning through seed rounds, I was studying building codes and municipal tendering laws. Then I landed my first real contract. A mid-sized apartment complex needed full repiping. 112 units. I underbid the competition by 9%, not because I was desperate, but because I knew where they were bloated. I delivered on time, under budget, with 0 major errors. Word traveled fast. Within a year, I had 4 crews working under me. Branded trucks. Payroll. Safety officers. By the 3rd year, we weren't just plumbing, we were managing full-scale infrastructure retrofits. Old hospitals. Government buildings. Schools. Nathan didn't know. I never advertised. But the numbers were there. By the time he launched his 3rd startup, a project management app for remote creative teams, I had just signed a 5-year city contract to upgrade the water systems in a dozen public schools across the county. And still I stayed quiet. Because I knew his world. He was addicted to presentation. The pitch deck. The buzzwords. The illusion of momentum. He always needed to seem like he was soaring, even when the runway was crumbling underneath. I remember the call when it all fell apart. It was a Thursday afternoon. I had just wrapped a site inspection at a newly renovated courthouse. My phone buzzed. It was Nathan. He didn't call me often, mostly texts, usually about something shallow or sarcastic. But this time, his voice cracked a little. You busy? I stepped out of the truck and leaned against the fender. What's up? He sighed. Long pause. Then, investors pulled out. The back-end team left. We can't make payroll. I didn't gloat. I didn't say, I told you so. I just asked what he needed. He said he didn't know? I could hear the fear creeping into his voice. The realization that this time, there was no buffer. No bailout. No next project waiting in the wings. I offered to help, not with money, but with advice. Introduce him to someone who could help restructure what was salvageable. He thanked me. I never heard back. 2 weeks later, his company folded. Quietly. No press release. Just a line in a tech blog and a LinkedIn update that he was seeking new opportunities. That was the moment I felt something shift. Not in him. In me. Because for the first time, I realized that the whole time he was laughing at my trade, I was building something he'd never be able to replicate: resilience. His success had been artificial. Inflated by attention, propped up by connections. Mine was rooted in something real. Concrete. Pipe. Steel. Reputation. A few months after his company collapsed, I got a call from a major state contractor. They had a backlog of school infrastructure projects and needed a reliable firm to partner with. One of my former clients had recommended me. That contract changed everything. Multi-phase. Multi-county. 7 figures. It meant expanding fast. I hired engineers, designers, legal consultants. We opened a new headquarters. Branded uniforms. CRM systems. The works. Still, I didn't tell my family. Not yet. Because I was saving that story for the perfect moment. And it came funnily enough at another family dinner. Thanksgiving this time. Roasted turkey. Too many pies. Dad asleep in the recliner by 4 p.m. Same house, same table, same cast. But a very different energy. Nathan looked thinner. A little worn. The Tesla was gone. He didn't say much during dinner, just pushed food around his plate and offered polite smiles. Then, like clockwork, Mom turned to me. "Caleb, how's your little plumbing company?" Before I could answer, Nathan snorted. "Still fixing sinks, or have you graduated to toilets now?" The room chuckled nervously. That's when I reached into my pocket, pulled out a business card, and slid it across the table to him. He picked it up. "Read it." Then read it again. His face changed. Because it didn't say, "Caleb Morgan Plumber." It said, "Caleb Morgan, CO. Morgan Systems Municipal Infrastructure and Design. Licensed state contractor, federal cleared public-private specialist." Silence. I leaned back in my chair. "We just got approved for a $12.4 million school retrofit project. You might have read about it." No one said a word. Not even Mom. And in that moment, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pride. I felt freedom. Because I realized that I no longer needed Nathan's approval. I never had. I had just been waiting for the version of myself that didn't want it anymore. That was the version sitting at that table. And Nathan? He was finally starting to understand who I was. The funny thing about success is that the people who used to mock you are often the first to circle back when things get quiet on their end. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, Nathan emailed me. The subject line was short. "Coffee?" I hesitated for a moment. Then replied, "Sure." "You pick the place." We met at a quiet little cafe near the business district. It was one of those upscale spots with exposed brick, Edison bulbs, and menus written in chalk. The kind of place Nathan used to take investors to when he was still pitching apps and disruption models. He was already seated when I arrived. No laptop this time. Just a mug of black coffee and a man who looked more human than I'd seen him in years. His blazer had been worn more than once. His watch was missing. But his handshake was firmer than it used to be. Like maybe, just maybe, he was starting to understand the value of grip. We skipped the small talk. After a few pleasantries, he got to it. "Listen, I've been doing some thinking. I know I've said stuff in the past, some stuff about your line of work. I didn't get it." He looked me in the eyes when he said that. And for once, I believed him. Then he asked what I never expected. "Are you hiring?" I didn't answer right away. I just sipped my coffee and let the silence stretch long enough for him to feel the weight of the question. Then I nodded. "Come by the office next week." He thanked me, almost too quickly. Like a man grabbing onto the last rope thrown from a sinking ship. But I wasn't angry. I wasn't even smug. because the part of me that had once craved vindication was quiet now. When he showed up the following week, he wore a button-down shirt and held a folder under his arm. Resume, references like any applicant. He walked into our new building, 3 floors of clean lines, open space, and state-of-the-art project boards, and paused. I could see it in his eyes. He didn't expect this. He expected a glorified garage. Instead, he walked into a fully operational infrastructure hub. Engineers pacing in reflective vests. Blueprints stretched across tables. Digital models rotating on wall-mounted displays. He followed me to my office. I gestured for him to sit. "You're not here as my brother," I said. "You're here as a candidate." He nodded. I opened the folder, looked at the resume, then pushed it aside. "Tell me what you're good at." He paused. Then said, "Operations. Workflow systems. Process automation." I believed him. Nathan wasn't incompetent. He had skills when they weren't buried under ego. "All right," I said. "You'll shadow Alicia. She runs procurement and logistics. If she says you're valuable, we'll talk about something permanent." He blinked. "You're serious?" "I don't do fake offers," I said. "Not in this company." He stood, shook my hand, and thanked me again, this time slower. Deeper. It was almost humble. Almost. The next few weeks were strange. Watching Nathan operate in my world. Taking notes in site meetings. Asking real questions. Listening. But what struck me most wasn't how much he was learning. It was how much he didn't know. The systems. The codes. The pressure valves. The sequencing. He'd built things in theory. I'd built them with my hands. Still, he adapted. Fast. And slowly, something started to happen. We became partners. Not in title, but in rhythm. I watched him respect our foreman. I saw him run logistics on a complex project with 0 errors. He even stayed late during a winter storm to make sure a delivery got rerouted. He wasn't the same man who mocked me at dinner tables. And I wasn't the same man who flinched when he did. One day, after a project debrief, he knocked on my office door. "Can I ask something?" I looked up. "Sure." He hesitated. Then said, "Why'd you really hire me?" I leaned back. Thought for a second. Then answered, "Because I needed someone who understood failure. And knew how to come back from it." He didn't respond. But his eyes did. And in that silence, something healed. Not everything. But enough. Months passed. Projects multiplied. Our company grew. And then came the day. The city reached out. They were putting out bids for a new regional infrastructure project, by far the biggest I'd ever seen. Over $40 million in phased contracts. I called a team meeting. We set up war rooms. Drafted proposals. Reworked numbers. Nathan stayed up 3 nights in a row optimizing the supply chain logic. When we submitted, I didn't expect to win. We did. And 2 weeks later, I stood at the edge of a cleared construction site, hard hat on, watching our crews break ground. That night, I called Nathan into my office. Pulled out a small black box. Inside, a set of keys. I slid them across the desk. He opened it. Frowned. "What's this?" "Your office." "Your title." He looked at the key, then at me. "You're serious?" "Vice President." Equals say in ops. Equals stake. You earned it. He sat there stunned. Then whispered, "I don't know what to say." I smiled. "Don't say anything. Just show up tomorrow like always. Same boots. Same clipboard." And he did. But what he didn't know was that there was one more move left. One last reveal. I've always believed the most powerful revenge is the one they never see coming, not because it blindsides them, but because it comes wearing kindness. A few weeks after Nathan settled into his new role, I scheduled a private lunch. Nothing dramatic. Just me, him, and a small room upstairs in our HQ with a window view of the new site. The place we built. The contracts we won. The legacy we were carving brick by brick. He thought it was just a casual check-in. And that's exactly how it started. We talked progress metrics. Crew expansion. Equipment rotation schedules. I listened to him speak with confidence and clarity, and for the first time, I saw a man who had stopped performing and started building. Not for attention. Not for praise. But because he believed in what we were doing. Then, I slid a folder across the table. No warning. No dramatic build-up. He opened it. Inside was a contract, not a standard employment extension, not a new deal with vendors. It was a partnership equity agreement. The kind that made him co-owner of Morgan Systems. His hands stopped. He looked up at me. I stayed quiet. He flipped through the pages. His lips moved silently as he read the terms. Favorable. Generous. More than he ever could have negotiated on his own. Then he reached the final page. That's where I taped a photo, an old one. Us as kids? Covered in dirt. Fixing a broken sprinkler in the backyard. He stared at it. Didn't speak. Not for a long time. Then he said something I'll never forget. Why are you doing this? After everything I said, everything I did. I leaned forward. Calm. Direct. Because I wanted you to earn your place, not apologize for it. That moment didn't erase the past. But it reframed it. Because here's the thing no one tells you about being underestimated your whole life. You can use it. You can build your foundation out of every insult, every eye roll, every fake smile. Every time someone looked at you and saw less, you store it. Not in anger. Not in bitterness. But in fuel. And then, when the time is right, you burn it. You light up the sky with the life they said you'd never have. And if you're lucky, like I was, they'll be standing beside you in that glow, humbled. Human. The following month, we held a company event to announce the partnership. Our whole team was there, 4 men, designers, apprentices, even the guys from the first crew I ever hired. Nathan stood on stage next to me, silent while I spoke. Not out of shame but out of respect. I told our story, not as brothers, but as builders. At the end, I handed him a small velvet box. He opened it. A new set of keys. This time engraved. Systems co-founder. He looked at me like he didn't deserve it. But that wasn't my call. He had shown up when it mattered. Taken the hits. Stayed late. Learned the job from the ground up. That's how legacy works. It's not passed down. It's built sideways. After the ceremony, people came up to shake his hand. I watched them. Heard the tone in their voices. The shift. The recognition. He wasn't Nathan the startup guy anymore. He was Nathan Morgan, co-founder of something real. We walked outside later that night. Just the two of us. Lights from the office glowing behind us, machines humming at a nearby job site. He said, I spent a long time thinking I was better than you. I said nothing. He continued, you didn't prove me wrong with words. You just lived bigger. I nodded. That was always the plan. He laughed, then asked the question I knew was coming. Would you have given me this shot if I hadn't failed first? I thought for a long time. Probably not. He appreciated the honesty. That's something we were learning to give each other now. Because respect, real respect, isn't handed over a holiday meal. It's earned in the trenches, in the spaces where people work, sweat, and show up. In the months that followed, our company didn't just grow. It thrived. We expanded to new states. We got featured in a national engineering publication. We even got invited to present at a municipal infrastructure summit. Nathan spoke on logistics. I spoke on design. People assumed we always worked together. We never corrected them. Because sometimes the revenge you plan turns into redemption you never expected. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing acknowledgement. I was shaping legacy with the very person who once laughed at my dreams. Not because I forgot what he said, but because I decided his words wouldn't be the final line of my story. The call came on a crisp October morning. It was from our legal team. The city had just approved our biggest bid yet, a multi-year, cross-state infrastructure overhaul, involving over a dozen municipalities, nearly $70 million in phased funding, and a timeline that would span nearly a decade. Nathan and I were on site at a midtown elementary school when I got the call. I didn't say much, just turned to him, phone still at my ear, and said, "Pack your calendar." We rode back to HQ in silence, the kind of silence that isn't empty but electric charged with years of buried tension now surfacing as mutual purpose. That afternoon, we gathered the department heads in the conference room and laid it all out, the contracts, the strategy, the vision. I watched Nathan lead parts of the meeting, confident, calm, dialed in. And I thought, this is the version of him I never got to know growing up. Not the showman. Not the favorite. Just the man. The worker. The brother. That night I stayed behind. Everyone had gone home. The building was quiet, lit only by security lights and the amber glow of a single desk lamp. I walked through the halls, past rooms filled with blueprints, drone footage, procurement files. Past offices where people I'd hired now ran departments, mentored newcomers, designed the next generation of systems. And then I walked into the server room. I keep a photo in there taped behind the master rack unit. It's of me. Age 19. Covered in grime, kneeling beneath the house with a flashlight between my teeth and a wrench in my fist. No safety net. No partners. Just a kid who believed that doing something well, even something small, could build a life worth living. I stood there for a while, breathing in the hum of servers, the quiet power of circuits carrying the heartbeat of a company no one thought I could create. And I thought back to that night at my parents' table. The moment Nathan laughed. The moment I said nothing. Because I wasn't weak. I was waiting. Every insult. Every belittling smile. Every time I was made to feel like my labor was second class. All of it had been stockpiled, not in bitterness, but in blueprints. I used it all. And then I built something they couldn't ignore. Nathan never apologized in so many words. He didn't need to. His presence beside me every day said more than any confession could. But the final twist, the one that made everything feel whole, came unexpectedly. My father, now recovered, came by the office unannounced one afternoon. I found him standing in the main hall, staring at the etched glass sign behind reception, Morgan Systems, founded 2013. He turned when he saw me, and for a second, I braced for one of his classic reserved nods. Instead, he opened his arms. He hugged me, tighter than he ever had. Then he stepped back and said, "You did more than carry the name, son. You redefined it." And just like that, the weight dropped off my shoulders. All those years of being overlooked, underappreciated, boxed in by someone else's idea of what success looked like. Gone. I never wanted revenge to feel like dominance. I wanted it to feel like recognition. Like justice done quietly. Like the scales tipping out with a bang, but with a whisper. Now, when I look at Nathan walking the halls, joking with crew leaders, managing logistics like clockwork, I don't see a rival. I see someone who finally learned what I always knew. That dignity isn't found in title or salary. It's found in ownership of your work, your mistakes, your legacy. A few days ago, we hosted a city event. Officials came out. We cut another ribbon. Cameras flashed. After the event, a young man approached me. Nervous. Shirt untucked. Hands calloused. He said, "Sir, I'm just a plumber. But I've been following your story." I stopped him there. Looked him square in the eye. And said, "Don't ever say just before what you are. That's where people start to lose." He smiled. Thanked me. And walked away a little taller. That's what this was always about. Not beating Nathan. But breaking the idea that value only comes from prestige. Because now I know better. It comes from showing up. From building. From quietly becoming the kind of man no one expected, including yourself. There's a stillness that comes after the storm of proving yourself. A calm not born of victory, but of release. I no longer walk into rooms needing to explain who I am. My work speaks. My people speak. The city itself reflects the imprint of the hands that once dug trenches in silence. And Nathan? He shows up at 6:45 a.m. Now. Coffee in one hand, clipboard in the other. He doesn't boast. He listens more than he talks. And when someone asks where the company came from, he always points to me. Not because I demand it, but because now he understands. We aren't two men fighting for space anymore. We're co-architects of something bigger than either of us alone. Some nights, I still walk through the warehouse. Alone. Lights off. Just the hum of tools, shelves of gear, and that faint, dusty scent of metal and labor. It's there, in that quiet, that I feel it fully the justice. Not loud. Not bitter. Just real. We spend so much time wanting the world to notice us. But sometimes, the truest revenge isn't being seen. It's becoming undeniable. So if someone out there doubts you, mocks your work, tells you you're just anything, let them. And they'll build quietly. Because when the day comes that you slide those keys across the table, they'll know. You were never just anything. You were always more than they could imagine.